What is up, everybody? My name is Famous and welcome to another episode of Pokemon Go. A couple of months ago, I predicted that Alolan Pokemon would be added early into the game. And since Niantic confirmed that that is going to be the case, I thought it would be a good time to go ahead and revisit this topic, talk about which Pokemon are going to be the best, and then also at the end of the video, I'm going to be talking about how I think the Alolan Pokemon will be implemented into the game. If you do enjoy this type of content, be sure to like and subscribe, but without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the list. The first set of Pokemon that we have to take a look at is going to be Rattata and Raticate. They do pick up a new typing of Dark type. I don't think that these Pokemon are going to be useful, but there is a little bit of a buff on Raticate's behalf. So when we take a look at the stats, you're going to see that there is a little bit of an increase for Alolan Raticate. But the big red flag is going to be that it had a massive decrease in its overall attack stat. So I don't think these Pokemon are going to be quite as useful in the game. Let's go ahead and move on to the next one. We have Diglett and Dugtrio. I think that these Pokemon are going to be a lot of fun to have in the game. You're going to want to battle with them. You're going to want to leave them in gyms, specifically Dugtrio with that amazing haircut. But these Pokemon are picking up the Steel typing. I'm thinking that they are going to be a lot of fun to have, but of course they're not going to be quite as useful when we take a look at the stats. This is going to be the first Pokemon on the list that we actually have a decrease in the max CP. It's the first one, but it is not the only one. The main reason for that is going to be it does have a decrease in its attack stat, which, like I said, is going to be a red flag. Let's go ahead and move on to the next Pokemon. And that is going to be Meowth and then also Persian. We are getting a completely different typing, replacing it with Dark. I don't think these Pokemon are going to be useful, but a lot of people actually like the designs of them, and I could easily see people setting them as buddies, walking with them, leaving them in gyms, just because they like the way that the models look. So I definitely want to give a shout out to all the fans who do enjoy the Meowth or the Persian. When we take a look at the stats, we're going to see a pretty significant increase in stats for Alolan Persian, which is nice. The main reason for that is because it does get a buff in its attack stat. And with a new typing, it could be a little bit more useful, but still not going to crack into a top 5 by any means. Let's go ahead and move up further on the list. We've got Alolan Marowak. Alolan Marowak is a Pokemon that is a really cool typing combination of Fire and Ghost. Although it was not the first Pokemon to have the Fire and Ghost typing, for Pokemon Go purposes, it will be the first Pokemon in the game with Fire and Ghost. Unfortunately, it doesn't have that great of stats, so it's probably not going to be that useful, but definitely a cool Pokemon. When we take a look at the stats, you will see that it does actually maintain the exact same max CP. That's the first Pokemon that we have seen that didn't have any type of change. Basically, it was literally just the typing. Definitely something cool and that I am looking forward to catching in the game, though. Let's go ahead and move on. We've got Alolan Raichu. Alolan Raichu picks up the Psychic typing. A lot of people are kind of curious about where this comes from, and personally, I'm thinking it comes from the anime. There is an episode where there is a surfing Pikachu with blue eyes that is believed to be psychic. And all of those things kind of lead to what Raichu is. It's a surfing Raichu. It has blue eyes and it picks up the Psychic typing. So if you are curious as to how they came up with that, you can totally tell your friends that and they'll think you know a lot. Let's go ahead and look at the stats though. Something cool that we're going to see is that there is a buff in the stats, but is it going to be enough to make it relevant? The only way that Raichu is going to be relevant in this current situation is if it gets an exclusive move or an absolutely ideal moveset from an electric perspective. I think that from a psychic perspective, it's going to be very tough to compete with some of the Pokemon that have an absolutely high attack stat. For example, we've got Alakazam, but either way, this will be a fun Pokemon to have. So how would you catch Raichu? This is going to be one of the Pokemon that has a pre-evolution, just like what Marowak did as well. I personally think that Alolan Raichu is going to act as a completely separate Pokemon that you would have to catch in the wild. You will not be able to evolve to it, but that is my personal opinion. We'll just have to wait and see what Niantic decides. Up next on the list, we have Alolan Vulpix and Alolan Ninetails. These are two Pokemon that a lot of fans are very excited about seeing. They love the way that the models look, and they really want to have these type of Pokemon. But as we know, Ninetales has always been an incredible looking Pokemon, so to get an ice type spin on it is something that I am personally looking forward to seeing in the game. So will Ninetales be usable? There's really only one case that I think it actually could be usable, and that's going to be because it has a double resistance to dragon typing. Because of that, it's very possible that Ninetales could be useful, but unfortunately it can't happen from the fairy type perspective because in Pokemon Go there isn't even a fairy type quick move, so it would have to be a double ice type moveset that is an absolute ideal moveset for it to get any usability in the game. When we take a look at the stats, we are going to get a slight buff for Alolan Ninetales, and that's mainly going to be because its attack stat goes up by 1 and then its defense stat goes up by 3. So it's definitely a positive direction, but I don't know if it's going to quite be usable. Let's go ahead and move up further on the list. We have Sandslash and then Sandshrew. These two Pokemon definitely look really cool. I like how Sandshrew's kind of going for that Eskimo igloo type look. They do pick up the ice and then steel typing. I don't know if they'll be usable though. Sandslash kind of falls victim to being really far down on the list from a ground type perspective, and unfortunately from an ice and steel perspective, that's kind of the same case again. The only way it could be relevant from at least a steel type perspective is if it gets a new moveset that is not currently available in the game. When we take a look at these Pokemon and we're talking about the stats, it does get a buff in the stats. Although it does have a little bit of a red flag because its attack stat goes down, but it picks it up in its defense stat mainly that does go a lot higher, and it does go up a little bit, but overall it's not going to be useful, and then having an attack stat go down, like I said, is going to be a recipe for disaster in Pokemon Go. Let's go ahead and move up further on the list. Up next we have Alolan Grimer and Alolan Muk. I am not going to lie to you, from a model type perspective, I love the way that Muk looks, and it actually could be a little bit useful, but I'll talk a little bit about why I think it could be useful. So these Pokemon are now going to be Poison and then also Dark type. So currently how it stands in the game, we don't have any type of statuses, such as being poisoned. I think that with Muk, it could theoretically be useful once we get some status symbols in the game. I'm crossing my fingers and hoping that Niantic will do that. I'm definitely going to make an episode talking about how I think it will work. So make sure that you subscribe if you want to see something like that. Let's go ahead and take a look at the stats. These two Pokemon are going to actually be exactly the same. So the only difference is going to be a change in the typing. Let's go ahead and move on further up this list. We have an exciting Pokemon to take a look at now, and that's going to be Alolan Exeggutor, Max AP of 2,882. Alolan Exeggutor is a grass/dragon type Pokemon, so it does drop the Psychic and picks up the Dragon. So you might be asking yourself, well, is this Pokemon going to be useful? Technically, it may not be useful because when we take a look at the stats, you will notice that it does get a decrease in the Max AP. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It always depends on which stats got buffed and which stats got nerfed. If you will take a look at it though, its attack stat and its defense stat went down. Because its attack stat went down, that means that Alolan Exeggutor is not going to be the better of the two from a grass type perspective. The only way that that can change is if Alolan Exeggutor gets a better move, such as Frenzy Plant. I don't think that will happen, but that would be the only way it would happen. And then from a dragon type perspective, although it would be really cool to see Alolan Exeggutor from a dragon type perspective, it's just not going to be usable because there are so many decent dragon type attackers in the game. But regardless of how usable it's going to be, I still think a lot of people are going to be excited about battling with it, putting it in gyms, and definitely trying to catch them. It's a funny looking Pokemon that I think a lot of people will want to have. Let's go ahead and finish off this list with the final family, and that's going to be Alolan Geodude, Graveler, and Golem. I do want to apologize for the models on this because they actually don't exist, and it was very difficult to find, so hopefully you will bear with me on it. When we're talking about Golem, I personally think that Golem is single-handedly going to be the most useful Alolan form in this game. When we talk about the stats though, you are going to see at the bottom that Alolan Golem and Golem actually have the exact same stats. So how could it become more useful? Well, that's a great question. Basically, because of the typing picking up the electric and dropping the ground, it now no longer has a double weakness to grass and then water, and then it also is a double resistance to flying. Because Tyranitar ended up getting a double rock type move, that moved Golem down to the number 2 spot from a rock type perspective. But then having the right resistances could actually make Golem useful in something that I am personally very excited to see in the game, and that I am by far going to crown as the most useful Alolan form. So now that we have made it to the end of the video, I want to go ahead and talk a little bit about how I think that the Alolan Pokemon are going to be implemented into the game. I think that it would make sense to go ahead and be a part of the weather system. There was a recent leak to say that there was some type of weather called a rainbow weather type, and I think what'll happen is once a region goes through a raining period and then it switches, instead of it just switching to the next thing, for instance like going from rain to sunny, I think it would instead go from rain to rainbow. At that time, once it went to rainbow, that would mean that Alolan Pokemon would at least be more likely to spawn like we have seen with the weather system. Hopefully it isn't exclusive just to that rainbow weather. It is very possible though. But anyways, I hope you did enjoy this episode. I hope that you learned a lot. I hope that you are very excited about catching Alolan Pokemon. I do have a question of the day for you. Which Alolan Pokemon are you looking most forward to catching in the game? Be sure to put it in the comments section below, and I will see you next time.
Hit me like a tidal wave.